Good morning and good evening. My name is Geeta Murli. As CEO, I have the immense privilege of leading Room to Read, and I'm so grateful for those of you who have joined us today to discuss a topic that is very near and dear to my heart, the power of books to promote diversity and inclusion. We're excited to count more than 500 registered guests representing 29 countries for the event today. And this turnout is a testament to how relevant and universal this conversation is around the globe. I love seeing the books referenced in the chat, so many different voices and ideas that have helped shape our worldviews. Thank you for all of your book suggestions. I have a family of readers, and I'm currently reading Corey Rosen's Your Story Well Told. My daughter, on the other hand, is reading Jason Reynolds' As Brave as You. I will definitely note down all of your great suggestions to add to our book lists at home. As we all know, reading helps us empathize and better understand those around us. Books are windows to the experiences of others and mirrors that reflect back and validate our own experiences. Books and literature are also a source of stability, comfort, and hope for young people. And we see that dynamic playing out now as a new catastrophic wave of COVID-19 makes its way through India, where we have almost 600 of our 1,600 employees. Amid this turbulence, Room to Read is actively ensuring that education endures by providing books, learning materials, and instruction to families during school closures. For many children, books help to impart social and emotional skills that help make sense of the world around them. On a broader level, education lifts people up and helps them choose their own futures. Today, you will hear from an inspiring group of guest speakers from all around the world who will discuss the broad spectrum of diversity and the intersectionality of identities, as well as how books can bridge divides and build a more inclusive, unifying, and empathetic world. To lead this discussion, I am honored to introduce my dear friend and partner, Maya Soetoro Ng, peace educator and advisor to the Obama Foundation, where she works closely with their Girls Opportunity Alliance and International Leaders Asia Pacific program. Prior to her work with the Obama Foundation, Maya was the director of the Matsunaga Institute for Peace and Conflict Resolution at the University of Hawaii at Manoa, where in addition to leading outreach and development initiatives, she also taught leadership for social change, history of peace movements, peace education, and conflict management for educators. Maya has published a number of book contributions, as well as a gorgeous and compelling picture book entitled Ladder to the Moon, and is currently under contract to write a young adult novel, which I cannot wait to read. Maya also sits on many voluntary boards and is the co-founder of the nonprofit Seeds of Peace, the Institute for Climate and Peace Studio. Without further ado, please join me in welcoming Maya.
Thank you so much, Geeta, for that beautiful introduction. And thank you for giving us the space to explore the rich diversity of diversity and help us champion the rigorous diversity in children's literature. The speakers, storytellers, and advocates from whom we will hear today offer mirrors to us and to the young readers of the world. Stories of people who act like them, their families, their communities, stories that build confidence and affirm ways of being or share the gifts of a particular race, ethnicity, gender, culture, language, disability, or circumstance. They give kids and communities a voice so that young people develop a positive understanding of their identity, so that they love who they are, so that they truly believe that they belong and matter in spite of the challenges. These stories allow people to proudly carry and express a sense of home, as I see it, wherever they go, even if they're refugees, migrants, or houseless. Diverse stories, of course, are also windows offering young people views of expansive worlds, real or imagined, familiar, fantastic, so that these young people can understand the complexity of human life and relationships. And all of the speakers and organizations here today are really also helping us to consider the power and value of stories that bring voices from margin to center and illuminate voices in the shadows. So it's really social justice work as I see it. These stories compel us to listen deeply, so that the magic of other people and places are revealed, so that people get better at hearing the truth outside of their lived experiences, so that their imagination is sparked, and so that they can build the beloved community with those near and far. So thank you so much, all of you, for being here. I'm just delighted to have you as part of our extended family and community. We know that young people have an easy ability not only to accept, but also to value, cherish, and enjoy the differences in others, or find points of intersection with others. So let's make sure as they grow up, they have access to innumerable stories that widen their wonder, so that they don't start getting small and trapped in small spaces. In feeling wonder, they'll come to understand both their own power and their responsibility. So without further delay, I'd like to introduce two special guests joining me in this discussion. First, Christabel Pinto, who's the Senior Director of Literacy Global Programs at Room to Read, based in San Francisco, and Beth Phelan, founder and president of Diverse Voices, a nonprofit organization representing marginalized writers. Let's start with Christabel. Welcome, Christabel.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
It's good to have you. Okay, so from its work from literacy instruction to school libraries, why did Room to Read become a children's book publisher?
So the goal of Room to Read's literacy program is to serve the literacy development of children all around the world. But it's really hard to learn how to read if you don't have access to books. And unfortunately, this is a reality for so many of the children who we serve. So Room to Read came to book publishing out of necessity. We assessed the local markets in the communities where we serve children and noticed a pretty consistent gap. There is a gap in locally developed books for children who are emerging readers. We set out to address this gap by training local authors and illustrators who themselves might not have experienced a children's book to develop children's books at the right level that were local and that were engaging for the children in their communities. So at this point, we have more than 1,600 titles across 42 languages, and those numbers keep changing.
That's amazing. I love Room to Read. I love you and all that you all are doing. As an educator, Christabel, what is your perspective on the true value of diverse children's literature? Why is this important?
I can think of two broad areas of benefit. The first is that diverse literature motivates readers. In particular, I'm thinking of reluctant readers because those are the ones we worry about. But really, it motivates all readers. All of us who love to read have had that experience of how hard it can be to put a book down. When a book is a mirror to a child's experience, they can feel an emotional connection to it that makes them feel like, oh, reading is for me. I want to learn how to do this. This is something that resonates with me. Or if a book is more of a window into new experiences, that can light a child's natural curiosity about the world and can be equally motivating. So I think that diversity in a book collection is key because we never really know which particular book is going to light which particular child's fire. So having a diverse collection ensures that as we reach as many children as possible, so that as many kids can find at least one book that resonates with them and then can motivate them to pick up another book and yet another book and become lifelong readers. The other area of benefit that I see with diverse literature is that it helps to develop children as little humans, supporting them to become global citizens. Books can allow us to meet people who we may never meet in real life. And in this way, unfamiliar communities become familiar to us. When you can connect with a character in a book, even though that character is different from you, because of universal human experiences and feelings like humor and loss and celebration and grief and joy and anger, you realize that the overall human identity that we share is so much stronger than our individual identity markers.
I know so well the magic that you speak of when you find that book that connects to some need that you have as a child, and the mystery of that moment. And I've seen it in my children. I love everything that you said. Thank you. What are your thoughts on the effects of globalization on representing specific and unique cultures?
Because Room to Read works with local authors and illustrators in the communities we serve, the books that have resulted from that have felt pretty unique and culturally diverse. When you look across this collection of more than 1,600 titles, the way in which characters are depicted, the clothes they wear, the kind of food they eat, their cultural norms can vary greatly, and really shows the breadth of diversity that we have on this planet and this diversity that we have of the human experience. So my hope is that what this means is that the effects of globalization are not so strong that they overpower local culture when it comes to storytelling. People seem to hold storytelling close. Practically, my guess is that diversifying your pool of book creators, while at the same time valuing cultural diversity, will help to mitigate the effects of globalization, because they are there. Cultures do change over time, but we have found that across our book collection, the local cultures shine through in the individual books.
Thank you, Christabel, for reminding us that books and stories help children to feel seen and develop into well-rounded human beings, to develop global citizenship, but also a strong commitment to local communities. We are truly grateful for your work in the world, and writers, illustrators, publishing also essential to our movement in support of diverse books and publishing. Thank you very much. Beth, I'd love to welcome you to the conversation. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Beth, I'd like to ask you, how did your role as an agent lead you to developing this nonprofit?
Yeah, so I don't know how many know, but in addition to being the president of Diverse Voices Inc., I'm also a literary agent. I guess you would call that my day job. And I've been a literary agent for almost 10 years. And back in 2016, I was hearing a lot of other agents and editors, and these were thoughts that were going through my head as well, that we weren't seeing a lot of marginalized authors and illustrators in our submission inbox. People were complaining like, we want to diversify our list, but we don't know how, we don't know where to find these authors. And these authors are out there. We just didn't know how to reach them, because as agents and editors, we are very passive in the way that we seek out clients. We wait until they submit to us. We advertise ourselves, but we have to wait until they actually press that submit button, hit that email send. And we were trying to figure out how we can be more active. And in general, publishing is very white. It's very cis het, non-disabled. It's incredibly homogenous, and we're not seeing a ton of inclusivity. So it was no wonder to me that marginalized authors weren't submitting, because what kind of message does that send to them? It says, you're not welcome here. We don't have any space for you. So I decided to start a Twitter pitch event called DV Pit in 2016. And I don't know how many people are on Twitter, but essentially a Twitter pitch event is a hashtag that everyone can use, where, if you're an author, you tweet your book you pitch your book as a tweet, and agents and editors can follow along with that hashtag and find your book and ask for more material. So it was one way that we could be active in our pursuit. And I really felt like we didn't have a set welcoming space where these authors could go. We didn't know, we kept complaining, we don't know where to find them. So I was like, well, maybe I can create that space for them. And the thing about DV Pit and about all of my programs at Diverse Voices Inc. is that we really emphasize the need for seeing marginalized people behind the book as well as in the book, because we do see a lot of publishing of non-marginalized people writing the stories of marginalized people. And to really feel inclusive and to really feel like we are authentically representing marginalized people, I wanted to see them also in control of their own stories and telling their own stories. So DV Pit was my way of doing that. And I found that just having that space made a huge impact and was really powerful. But the other impact was the sense of community that brought, not just for the agents and editors to have access to marginalized voices, but for those marginalized voices to find each other and to find support with each other, to find critique partners, to find friends, to find people who are going through a similar experience as they are. So I felt like that was probably the biggest advantage to doing something on Twitter, was we could reach everybody. Social media is great in that way. And I decided, with that sense of community and with the impact that DV Pit had, I wanted to create a nonprofit that could produce more programs with that same mission.
That is amazing and such important work, and courageous work. You are living up to the sort of maxim of nothing for us without us, and I love also that you are building community so that people can feel really nurtured and supported and held in this work. So thank you. Thank you for deepening our understanding too on the issue, the challenges and the opportunities. I'd like to ask you, what do you feel are the greatest challenges ahead in this shared endeavor?
Yeah, well, there's been a lot of awareness and a lot of self-education and acknowledgement of the issue that we do have, but we're not seeing the statistics really move and progress in the way that we want them to, compared to, considering how much awareness there is and how much conversation there is around the topic. So definitely, it remains an issue that non-marginalized people are telling the stories of marginalized people. But I think if we can get beyond that, the other issue that we're facing is that we just need more. We need to not tokenize these authors, not say, okay, well, I'm a literary agent with one Black author and that's all I need. I have one. A lot of, publishers are still sort of in that mindset of, this is going to be competitive with this other book that we have because they're both Asian authors, or they're both disabled authors or queer authors. So I think that we really need to get past that so that we can see a variety of a diverse set of stories, because no culture is a monolith, no demographic is a monolith. We need to be seeing a whole range of experiences, not just, the trauma or the racism or the pain of being a marginalized person, but also seeing the joy and the happiness and the humor and all of the love that there is. So I think definitely we just need more at this point.
I love that. I mean, yes, I couldn't agree more. We need that sort of strength-based approach that highlights everyone's gift, the bounty of these communities. Thank you. Can you share a little bit more about the various programs that Diverse Voices is offering to support these efforts?
Sure, yeah. So Diverse Voices Inc. is aimed at the traditional US English language book publishing market. And all of our programs are sort of centered around that. So DV Pit is something that still happens annually. And we also just launched our first free 2-day virtual writers conference in January, and that will also happen annually. And we really believe that knowledge is power. So we did a bunch of informative panels on craft like plotting and character development and world building. And we also covered industry topics like finding the right literary agent for you and how to deal with the financial aspect of choosing writing as a career choice. And we also did a bunch of Q&As, and we had a Discord channel that's sort of like Slack, if you've ever used Slack, where all of the attendees could congregate and network together virtually, because we, again, really want that sense of community. We also are just about to launch next month 2 mentorship programs. One of them is for writers who are looking for a literary agent. So they're sort of right at the beginning of their career. And we pair them with authors who already have literary agents who have already been through that process of finding one so that they can help guide them through that. And our other mentorship program is aimed at helping debuting authors navigate that experience. So we pair them up with veteran authors who have already been through that and can help them find more of that long-term success. So the first one is about entry and the other is about retention. In the future, we're hoping to include grants in our nonprofit mission to send authors to festivals and conferences, because it doesn't just end when the book is acquired or when the client is signed by a literary agent. We also want to see that book marketed. We want to see that author out there meeting readers. So definitely, publishers can't always afford to send every author that they have on their list, but certainly we want to make sure that as many diverse authors as possible can get out there. So we're hoping to do grants, and we also are hoping to introduce a book club and some kind of retreat somewhere in the future.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you. Thank you both so much for sharing your experiences and helping us to really further our determination to do this work. We are very fortunate to have you in the world. To continue our discussion, I'd like to welcome Dr. Duriya Aziz, who is the Senior Vice President of Scholastic International, a partner of Room to Reads for more than 20 years now. Based in Singapore, where it is the middle of the night, Duriya has recorded a message for us. She tells us more about their responsibility of raising issues of inequality and injustice through their publications, reaching millions of children and young adults in the world. Welcome, Duriya.
Hello there. Throughout its 100 years of existence, Scholastic has provided a platform for young people, all young people, to tell their stories, and for others all over the world to read and listen to them, all of them, so that they may understand current events and contemporary issues. First as a classroom magazine in 1920, and today as the world's largest publisher and distributor of children's books and educational materials, with operations and presence in more than 165 countries. How do we do this? Throughout Scholastic's entire history, we have raised the issues of prejudice, injustice, and inequality in stories in our magazines and in the books we have published. Stories of people who have overcome significant barriers to achieve greatness have been a constant presence in our books, magazines, and educational materials. In the US, Scholastic magazines were banned in several southern states in 1948 in response to a picture of a Black teenage boy on the cover of Junior Scholastic celebrating National Brotherhood Week. We strive to help young people understand the importance of working together to improve society, to understand the systemic problems of social, racial, class, religious, gender inequality, and the critical importance of each person raising their voice and standing up for just causes. That commitment is never absent. We encourage and support the creation of new books exploring issues related to difference, justice, and equity in society. In the US, the Scholastic Art and Writing Awards have provided voice and visibility to artists such as John Updike, Sylvia Plath, Andy Warhol, and more recently, Amanda Gorman, who composed and presented a stirring poem for the 2021 US presidential inauguration. Likewise, albeit on a smaller scale, Scholastic Asia sponsors the Asian Book Award and Picture Book Award, recognizing children's writers of Asian origin who are taking the experiences of life, spirit, and thinking in different parts of Asia to the world at large, and has led to the publication of a rich tapestry of fiction from diverse parts of Asia. We take our responsibility of putting books in the hands of children very seriously. Since 2001, Scholastic has been an integral part of Room to Read by donating books to their school libraries each year, more than 1.7 million books to date. Scholastic published My Arabic Library, a collection of books which are now in use in every Arabic-speaking country in the world. Scholastic also published My Afghan Library and distributed 2.3 million books to 27 of Afghanistan's 34 provinces. The stories and information brought to children through these sustained efforts bring hope for a better future and provide courage to develop their voice and to build agency. In the US and around the globe, Scholastic publishes the Kids and Families Reading Report, through which it provides platform and amplification for the issues that matter to children and their families. For example, in the latest report, it shows that a majority of parents and kids say diversity in children's books includes people and experiences different than their own, various cultures, customs, religions, settings, and living situations. Similarly, while a good story is, of course, a key factor that influences a parent's or child's desire for a book's characters are an important driver of preference and integral to the overall social emotional benefits of reading. Children develop their worldview and values from the stories that they are exposed to. These stories inspire courage and action. So it is equally important that we discuss these stories with them. One of my favorites in this regard is The Ugly Five by Julia Donaldson. Very simply, it tells the story of 5 of the most downtrodden, despised by the dominant population, animals of the African plain. It starts with the narrator identifying them as ugly. This is internalized by these 5 animals themselves, who go around believing that they are ugly, despicable, and unlovable. They mouth the values and beliefs of the dominant, powerful group, which becomes the main discourse and value system, until their own babies, who have yet to be educated in the ways of the world, set them right and show them that they are in fact beautiful and worthy of love and respect. Such is the power and ability of youth. I was once again reminded of this story because of something my 5-year-old granddaughter Ruqayya did. She convinced her kindergarten teacher to hold an Eid al-Fitr celebration in school, similar to the Chinese New Year celebration they had had earlier in the year. She even took on the responsibility of bringing decorations, cookies, and tokens to school. I'm so glad that her teacher not only agreed, but went on to hold a lovely celebration. What a positive impact this must have on Ruqayya's sense of self, her identity as a young Muslim girl, as a member of her preschool group, as a Singaporean, and her sense of personal, social, and national identity. the power of story. I leave you with these quotes from young people on the power of story.
I really love that story about Ruqayyah, because when you make space for a child's experience in the classroom in the way that Ruqayyah's teacher did, you create in that child a sense of belonging, and you help them to develop their own personal stories. When teachers use diverse children's literature in the classroom, it can have a similarly inclusive and self-affirming effect. So earlier today, I mentioned that Room to Read publishes globally diverse books. This work is greatly facilitated by having a globally diverse team. And it is one of the greatest privileges of my job to be able to work with these particular team members from all around the world. So it's an honor to introduce you to a few of them. In a moment, you'll be hearing from Carol Burrell, based in the United States, who will be facilitating a conversation with Alison Ziki in South Africa, Alfredo Santos in the Philippines, and Mahesh Patiratna in Sri Lanka, as they reflect on what diversity means in their parts of the world.
Hello, my name is Carol Burrell, and I am Associate Director, Global Children's Publishing for Room to Read. With over 1,600 titles benefiting children in 20 countries, through programs in Sri Lanka and the Philippines, in Jordan and South Africa, and throughout the globe, Room to Read works to grow children's book industries around the world and foster a love of and excitement for reading, and to give authors and illustrators an opportunity to create books on topics that speak to children in their own communities. I am pleased to be joined in this conversation on inclusivity and on bringing quality and diversity to their book collections by 3 leaders from our literacy team. I'll ask each one to introduce himself. Mahesh?
Hi, my name is Mahesh Patiratna. I'm based in Sri Lanka. I work as Associate Director for Literacy Program Room to Read. I'm working book publishing work in South Asia, particularly, and some other countries in Middle East and Africa.
Alfredo?
Hello, my name is Alfredo Santos. I'm based in the Philippines, and I support our programs in Southeast Asia and also Honduras and Indonesia.
Alison?
Hello, I'm Alison Ziki. I'm Room to Read Literacy Manager for Africa. I'm based in Pretoria, South Africa. I work with the publishing teams in South Africa, Tanzania, Rwanda, and Uganda.
How have communities benefited from the diversity and inclusion in the books that you produce?
It is immensely benefiting because our society has divided more than ever. And it seems like we really need to understand each other well to make sure we have the due respect and we can coexist in such a multicultural society. Especially the countries I work, there are a lot of different cultures and a lot of different ethnicities, a lot of different religions in a major level. Other than that, there are so many different layers of diversity you will find there. So in that sense, if you can represent some of these to make sure a lot of children have access to this kind of situation, the characters or the scenarios, so it is very beneficial. I think publishing books with element of diversity is really helping for children to understand others in our own community, which is very multicultural.
So in the case of South Africa, when we speak of diversity, first it's in the context of the country's history. So previously, during apartheid, you would get books, but the books would only be showing a single race, and it was mainly males of that race that would appear in books. So diversity has meant for us a correction of that, where the other races have started to appear in books. Other races have started to see themselves. And that has had the effect of affirming, especially the children from the other races, as they have started to appear and see characters like themselves in books. So that's what diversity has really meant for us. It has meant a correction, but it has also meant affirmation.
I think language is the single most powerful element of diversity that is contained in our books. To be able to read in your own language and to see your words reflected in the books that you read is such a powerful, an affirming experience for many of our readers. And it's also, for our writers and illustrators as well, being able to express and articulate their thoughts, their ideas, the full range of emotions in their own language gives them a very unique power that makes them all the more effective as storytellers. I think that's so. I think language is an important element for diversity, and as we know, all our books are written in the local languages.
What does diversity mean in your community?
So Room to Read currently is working in 2 countries where we have country offices, and that's Tanzania and South Africa. In a place like South Africa, diversity mainly means race. That opportunity to be shown in books, but to be also affirmed by books. But diversity also in South Africa goes to the area of gender. Experiences a lot of gender-based violence and a lot of prejudice against women. So one of our objectives in a place like South Africa is to show women in positive roles, in empowered roles, and also to try to capture the voices of women. In a place like Tanzania, on the other hand, race doesn't play a very big role. And what is more prominent in Tanzania in terms of diversity is religion. Tanzania is made up more or less roughly about 50% Christian community and 50% Muslim community. So religion in Tanzania, we find, is a bit more sensitive to the communities than race. And in a place like Tanzania as well as the rest of East Africa, diversity also goes into the area of disability and uniqueness. And here I'm thinking especially of albinism. So you find that in East African community, albinos are discriminated against. And one of our objectives in East Africa is to try to bring the marginalized albino communities more to the center and remove them from the periphery, and to try and create more tolerance around albinos, and also try to create more acceptance of their uniqueness.
But it's not into the same extent in most of the countries where we work. Therefore, the role the Room to Read play, the way we are talking it in our writers and illustrators workshop with our other stakeholders are really pioneering in that section. Therefore, to continue this good work, what we are doing, especially be conscious about the matter, and as Alison and Alfredo said, looking at what exactly it means to different places is very important. And I think Room to Read is initiating these things, which is a great contribution to not only to the children literature, but to the discussion of diversity and inclusion in our countries.
Thank you to Mahesh, Allison, and Alfredo for joining us today and for sharing your insights into the crucial discussion on diversity. It's been enlightening to see how different the differences in communities are in South Africa, Sri Lanka, the Philippines, Jordan, how varied they can be. Through these programs and others, Room to Read works to ensure that all writers and artists have opportunities to create books that illuminate children's lived and varied experiences so that all children can find that reflection of themselves in stories. To continue our journey around the globe, I would like to invite you to meet one of Room to Read's beneficiaries in Tanzania, Hafsa, a young girl whose resilience illustrates the power of books and education to overcome intolerance and exclusion.
Hafsa is 12 years old. She and her family lives in Buma village in Bagamoyo, Tanzania.
Nilianza kusoma darasa la kwanza. Nilisoma miezi 6. Nikaja nikaumwa. Nilikaa nyumbani miaka 3. Nikaja nikapona. Nikarudi tena shule.
Kuna wasiwasi mkubwa kwa hawa watoto kwamba unaishi kwa wasiwasi. Inafika wakati hata kutembea unaona tabu, baada tuition kwenda unaogopa. Lakini kwa gumu huo huku tuna kwa sababu kuna mambo makubwa kufuatilia kwa shuleni, na ni jambo kubwa kwenda, basi tunatumia sana utaratibu zingine wa kumpeleka au saa nyingine kwenda kutumia mtu ili afike shuleni.
Hafsa is one of the students benefiting from Room to Read's instruction program, which started in 2016 in Bagamoyo. Her teachers are very impressed by her progress. One of them explains how this has been possible.
Kwa kutumia mbinu za Room to Read, Hafsa aliweza kusoma darasa la kwanza na alikuwa vizuri, aliweza kuelewa na aliweza kujua kusoma mwaka jana. Mwaka huu Hafsa alikuwa anatakiwa awe darasa la 2 na uelewa wake ukawa ni mkubwa. Hivyo tukaona sisi kama shule kwamba tumpeleke darasa la 3. Na mwezi huu amefanya mtihani, amekuwa mtu wa 21 kati ya watu 63.
Kwa siku nachukua maktaba, nachukua vitabu 2, naenda navyo nyumbani nasoma, narudi navyo, afu nazima tena narudisha.
The libraries and classrooms provide space and friendly environment for the children to learn, borrow books, and develop the habit of reading.
Nachokufurahia kwanza, Hafsa kwanza anapenda kusoma sana. Hata usiku saa nyingine tangu kabla umeme hujaingia utamkuta na vibatari vile vikandiri, lakini anasoma saa 5 saa 6 analala. Na Room to Read kila siku wanaweza taratibu za maktaba na kwenda chukua vitabu anasoma, na vingine narudi navyo hapa. Na mimi kama mzazi sengine ananipa vitabu vya hadithi na ananihadithia na kanawazia na hadithi halali ya binti yule.
Room to Read is seeing to it by making sure Hafsa has a solid foundation in education.
It's really good to be reminded of the diversity of children that Room to Read serves around the world. As Allison mentioned earlier, the albino community is discriminated against in East Africa. And just imagine the power of having children's books with albino protagonists that are represented in their full and shared humanity. Room to Read has published one such book actually in South Africa, And we're hoping that books like that will make a really big difference in promoting peace and inclusion. So speaking of peace, I'd like to bring the conversation back to you, Maya. At Room to Read, we think of books as global connectors that build bridges between diverse people, that support people to be empathetic of each other's differences and different experiences. And we know that you have a pretty impressive collection of books on peace and justice. And we'd love to hear a little more from you on why that's so important.
Thank you so much, Christabel, for that question. Yes, I love my peace storybook collection. It's very important to me. And I love that Room to Read also shares, and I'm looking forward to bringing more of these books into my collection. Through my peace building work over the years, I have seen that peace, whether personal, interpersonal, or communal, requires a lot of creativity. And as I see it, the writers, illustrators, creatives of all kind play the most important role in building the kind of empathy and motivation that is needed to work for peace and justice. So with diverse literature, young people obviously get in touch, as we've been saying, with the particular and universal needs of self and other. And I also believe that later, as they experience the pain and conflicts of individual and community, which is inevitable, they'll be better poised to find their way out of rage and grief to determination and growth. And they'll be better prepared to see and nourish solutions for themselves, for their families, for their communities. So it really develops their leadership skills. The stories that we are championing today help people not only respect the gifts of different identities and lessen stereotypes and generalizations, but they also are a conduit to freedom, as I see it. They challenge these narrow truths and allow people to happily contain multitudes and give them that flexibility that is necessary to ally, affirm, uplift others. And so today, in the midst of so much chaos and hurt in the world, I really think it's important to be honest with children. I'm honest with mine in age-appropriate ways, of course, about conflict, about bigotry, about oppression. And then with storytelling, we can not simply critique and face hard truths, but we can also then instill love and commitment in the hearts of young people so that they are able to lean into their discomfort, experience the other, grow to love distant others, perhaps, and feel sturdy on the other side of that. And what else but good storytelling can cultivate that courage to go beyond received truths, to break down barriers, and then to also foster the capacity for sustained dialogue. And again, in this time of anxiety, discomfort, and struggle, when we share these stories of resilience, resistance, and joy, we can help to build determination so that we're not just feeling badly about the things that are happening, the conflicts of the world or the hurts. So my collection of peace books and yours, I really believe are critical, in other words, for both recognition, solution, for both solace and bravery, and basically to help young people become upstanders rather than bystanders.
Thank you so much, Maya. You have a way of bringing light to these issues that's so inspiring and moving. I want to just sit here and soak your words in for a little while longer. Thank you so much. What you said about not lying to children really resonates. I think that when we don't share diverse book collections with children, we're lying to them because the literature that they're reading does not represent the diversity of the world that we inhabit. So I'm taking your words with me and moving forward with them. Thank you. So my colleague earlier, Alfredo, mentioned the importance of language and being able to read and hear stories in your own language and how powerful that of an experience that is for a young reader, or for any reader, actually. So to hear a little more about the power of language, we are going to continue our virtual tour of the world and make a little stop in Switzerland, where we will meet with Ed Russell, the CEO of Librio, which is an innovative, personalized book publishing company that has partnered with Room to Read since 2018.
Hello, everybody. My name is Ed Russell. I'm the CEO of Librio. We're a personalized children's book publisher based in Switzerland. We've been a proud supporter of Room to Read since 2018, and we've donated over 200,000 books to their libraries through our More Than a Book program. In 2020, we were lucky enough to work with them to make this book, Be Brave. It's our most diverse book yet, and Room to Read's first personalized children's book. I'm going to talk to you today about the power of personalized children's books and how they're a wonderful celebration of the diversity of diversity. Before I get started, I'm just going to tell you what a personalized children's book is so you know what I'm talking about. If you go to our website, Librio.com, you can create a main character for your book by choosing the right name, skin color, hairstyle, eye shape, even clothing, so that they look just right. We then print that book digitally and send it to your home so that you have a book just like this to read with your little one. Incidentally, this is the book that I created for my little one, who was the inspiration behind Librio in the first place. The great thing about personalization is that as a publisher, instead of creating lots of individual books for each type of child, we can create one book and then use personalization technology to make that book appeal to a wide variety of children because they can be the main character in the book. Because this event is about the diversity of diversity, I thought it would be interesting to look at something which is often overlooked when it comes to personalization. When you think of personalization, you probably think about the appearance or the name of the child, but you probably don't think so much about the language that the child speaks. Because our books are printed digitally on demand, it means that we can translate our books into a much wider variety of languages than traditional publishers can. And that means that we can publish books for communities in languages which are often overlooked by traditional publishers. To see how Librio celebrates the diversity of language, we need to look at our little home country of Switzerland. Switzerland is about the same size and the same population as the US state of Virginia. But within that small area, there are 26 individual states or cantons, each of which has their own individual dialect. That means that it's possible for two people to live 100 miles apart in Switzerland, officially speak the same language, but not understand each other when they speak to each other. Because of the big variety of language here, all children's books are published in High German, which is the official language here, but nobody actually speaks colloquially. That means that as a parent reading to your child, you can either read it in High German, which is a language you never speak to your child in, or you can translate on the fly into Swiss German, and obviously neither of those are particularly enjoyable bedtime reading experiences. So 4 years ago, when we were setting up Librio, I witnessed my wife and daughter going through this every evening, and I realized that personalization isn't just about how the child looks or what it's called, it's also how it sounds. So we took this on board, and we created our first personalized children's book in 9 Swiss dialects, something that no publisher has ever done before. And we also threw in Romansh, which is a little-known 4th official language of Switzerland, spoken by only 50,000 people. What was really encouraging was that once we'd done this, we found that 50% of our sales in Switzerland were in dialect. So we made something which really resonated with the local community here, which no other publisher had done before. We've now taken that further, and we've translated 7 of our books into 20 different languages, including Luxembourgish and Welsh. What I particularly like about this story is that when we were looking for a literacy partner, we found that Room to Read had done exactly the same thing. They've also created books in languages otherwise overlooked by traditional publishers, because they also realize that there's a huge difference for a child to have a book in a language that it can speak and a book in a language that it does actually speak. At the end of the day, we see huge potential for personalization to create a wide variety of books for a wide variety of children. We're just at the beginning of our journey, but we're very excited to see where it can go. Working with Room to Read is our inspiration. Thank you very much.
Room to Read is so lucky for all of the wonderful partners that we have around the world. So I'd like to bring us back to the US and to the idea of books as peace builders. In 2020 was such a challenging year for us across the globe. And Room to Read wanted to respond and do something that felt positive in this really difficult time. So in the fall of 2020, we developed a collection of books by engaging book creators in the United States virtually in an intense process of collaboration over the course of weeks to develop books on the themes of peace and equality. We published 10 books on these themes, and they are diverse as the book creators who developed them. We are so lucky to be able to have one of the authors of these books, Jennifer Phillips, joining us from Seattle. Jennifer, thank you so much for being with us. We shared both your book as well as a recording of the read aloud with guests before the event. And so we'd love this opportunity to ask you a couple of questions. It's so exciting to interact with an author.
Thank you. Thank you for having me today.
Great. So I think the question I'm going to begin with, since your book was about neurodiverse children, I'm curious about what inspired you to write the invitation and touch on the theme of neurodiverse children.
Yes, absolutely. I do remember when I wrote this story down in my notebook of story ideas, and it was after watching a social media video where a community rallied behind a child. I believe the child had autism, who didn't have anyone show up for their birthday party. And I'll admit, I always feel conflicted when I see these types of videos where grownups kind of save the day for the child, and maybe the child feels better in the moment, maybe, but it doesn't address the systemic reasons for the exclusion. Our younger daughter does have an intellectual disability. She's a young adult now, but this was very much her situation during her school years. And it was the experience of her special needs friends as well. If they hadn't had each other, birthdays would have been 100% painful. So even with her immediate circle of friends, she always felt excluded from the normal kids, as she called them. Every child's story is a little different, of course, but this is a very real situation for many children. And birthdays tend to be a big rite of passage for children, and it really matters to them.
So important to represent the experiences of all children in books. So thank you so much for your work in this area. By bringing the story of Izzy and Kofi to life, what do you hope that young readers and the adults who are reading with them will think about?
Yeah, I mean, I think the invitation is looking at how we deal with feeling uncomfortable or confused around somebody else, and that goes for grown-ups as well. I do hope kids reading it will think about what they have in common with somebody, their classmates, more than what they don't have in common. And it is about getting out of our comfort zone, and that can lead to great experiences and even friendships. And I also think parents, teachers, other adults in a child's life, we play an important role in facilitating that discussion and also checking our own role modeling. Are we showing care, respect, and a bias to include rather than exclude? We're not always the best at this, and our children pick up on our cues, and I count myself in this. I'm constantly working on this myself in my life. I also hope there's neurodiverse readers who will recognize some piece of Izzy, the main character, and be proud of how she handles herself in the story.
Yeah, that's a really important point about us all being aware of our own behavior and what kind of models we are in the world. And then maybe just lastly, what are your thoughts on children's literature as a platform to raise awareness and promote inclusion?
Oh yeah, it's absolutely an important platform. It's not the only one, of course, but I think it's very powerful. And I think a lot about inclusion goes beyond just the social aspects, which are important. That sense of belonging is important as children and also as adults. And my hope is that children are exposed to insightful literature and mindsets. I mean, they're the adults of tomorrow, and they can help do their part to help address the societal wrongs for their former classmates. In the US, for example, speaking about the developmental disability community, and I'm also focused on the community with severe mental illness. And sometimes people don't understand that there's a lot of crossover between those two populations. And there are serious repercussions being faced by this population in policy, social services, social justice issues. We're addressing things like unsafe interactions with law enforcement, disproportionate representation in jails and prisons, which always breaks my heart when I think about that. Federal disability benefits are designed to keep recipients in poverty. And these are just naming a few of the disparities faced by children growing up to be adults in not too many years. So I think the question is, how do we use children's literature appropriately as one of the tools in this quest for equity?
Thanks so much, Jennifer. It's so exciting to talk to an author. And thank you for the work you do in promoting representation of all children, including those who are neurodiverse, and for adding your beautiful creations to children's bookshelves. Thank you.
Thank you.
So we're going to continue our tour and hop across the pond again. And we'll now have the privilege of hearing from a blogger based in the United Kingdom, Ellen Williams, who was named one of the top 100 most influential disabled people in the UK in 2018, and one of the BBC 100 Women in 2020, which is a list that features the most influential women in the world.
Hi everyone, I'm Ellen. I'm very excited to be joining you today from Wales to talk all about writing, blogging and disability representation on our bookshelves. 3 things I could talk about for hours, but don't worry, I'll keep this short and sweet. So to tell you a little bit about who I am a vision impaired and chronically ill person. I am the creator and writer behind the award-winning blog My Blurred World. I work in the third sector for a disabled people's organisation and I study part-time. And if all of that wasn't enough, I also mentor young vision impaired people and I'm an aspiring author. Essentially, everything I do revolves around creating things, advocating and writing some more because I can't seem to stop. My blog is the platform I've utilised to channel most of my advocacy work over the last few years. No topic has gone untouched. I've written about everything from dealing with my conditions, mental health, confidence, not forgetting my love of things such as books, music, beauty and fashion, and the importance of promoting accessibility and inclusivity in all of the above. You name it, I've probably written about it on my blog. My drive and determination to share all of this stems from my passion to raise awareness and help others in a similar situation. 6 years on, and my blog still helps me on my pursuit to create positive change. Now let's talk about disability representation on our bookshelves. I've been a bookworm since I can remember. I love escaping into the fictional realms. The world around us is so visual and I've feared losing out on aspects of it because of that. But books offer the opportunity for me to create my own imagined imagery. Words prompt images that I wouldn't otherwise see. But what strikes me is the lack of representation of disabled people in literature. Let me ask you a few questions. How many books have you read by disabled authors? How many books have you read with a disabled protagonist? How many books have you read where that disabled character is portrayed in an honest and positive light? I can count my answers on 2 hands. Lack of representation tells people that they are absent and that they don't have a role. Now, I don't know about you, but I grew up with some people telling me exactly that. I came across so many misconceptions as a child and somewhat believed them because I didn't have any positive representation of disabled people to prove me otherwise. That's why things need to change. Through having that disability representation on our bookshelves, we create an opportunity to challenge our understanding of different experiences and invite even richer education and storytelling into our lives. I already mentioned that I love escaping into fictional worlds. but I long to see some semblance of reality in there too. The reality that disabled people exist. We are here, a part of life, a part of society, and that should be reflected in the books we read. In the meantime, you'll find me creating my own stories, my own characters, and continuously writing my blog in the hope of reassuring others that they are not alone, and hopefully taking steps to create a more accessible and inclusive world for disabled people, because everyone deserves to know that they belong.
I spent some time on Ellen's blog and found myself going down a rabbit hole from one blog post to the next in the way that an engaging blog can do. Like children's literature, this blog can allow us to take a step in someone else's shoes and perhaps begin to imagine what their experience might be like, even if they're really different from us. So we're nearing the end of time that we have with each other. And I just wanted to say a quick word of thanks to all of you for the time that you've taken to be together with us today and to engage on this topic. I am going to turn it over to Maya again to share some closing remarks.
Thank you so much. I am deeply grateful for this time and community. All of you attendees are an important part of this work. Many of you are skilled creatives, storytellers, educators. Some of you are professionals in this space. All of you can impact it in what you choose to share, teach, purchase, and support in other ways. So today we have the freedom too to create our own stories as writers, bloggers, filmmakers, illustrators, graphic novelists, social media influencers, and digital journalists. So let's all look at storytelling, communication, deep listening, and amplification of voices more broadly and proactively and be part of this mission. And at this time of separation, I think that's so critical. So as was mentioned, young people are not lonely, since loneliness is not about physical isolation, but about that lack of connection. I really feel like the work that was collectively represented here invites small revolutionary shifts in perspective, and that's what we need. We need to wash our eyes, remind ourselves not to give up, to take refuge in more than the current circumstances. Our children and students need that right now. They're little navigators finding their way through storms and hardship to become problem solvers, activists, and change makers we so desperately need. So now in closing, dear participants, as we say farewell, it'd be wonderful if you would go to the chat and make note of one takeaway, the so what of the day. What is one thing you'll use and remember from our time together? What is one new thing that you will share or do? What is one thing that will change how you work or how you connect with community and kids? Thank you so much for being part of this extended family and shared endeavor. And we look forward to seeing you round some other corner or in some other book. As you share in chat, we are also pulling up the word cloud. These are the words that you shared with us in the last few days, all beautiful descriptions of what diversity and inclusion really mean to you and your communities. So thank you again, and aloha.